And so, yeah, let me just introduce myself real quick. I am Arsh. I'm from Lahore, Pakistan. And currently, I work as the Growth and Partnerships Manager of Alexandria Labs, which is a Web3 company that tries to bring forth publications into sort of a digital collective and sort of paving a new way for storytelling on online platforms. And before that, I worked at a media company called The Tempest, and I was the brand development strategist over there and also the community editor. And as brand development strategist, I mentored Janine, and we had a pleasant time, wonderful time working there. And yeah, that's a quick summary of my professional life. But personally, I love reading, painting, making good Instagram posts, and being an annoying spouse. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thanks so much, Arsh. Do you want to tell us about kind of is going into brand development, is going to sort of the brand management space something you always knew you wanted to do? Like, did you have that kind of like trajectory in mind while you were completing your education? Tell us how that came about.
That's actually a very funny story because I did not. That is a concise answer to the I did not. And I think this is something I'm going to structure my talk about on is how to expect the unexpected in a way. So I to start off, I have a bachelor's degree in applied psychology. And initially, I had in mind what I had in mind for my career path was to be a therapist. But as I progressed through through my courses, and I discovered that psychology can be applied to so many different fields and so many different aspects that I just wanted to explore it in a different way. I don't know if this is like a good thing or a bad thing, but I sometimes want to go through the road less traveled by, in a sense. As okay, I don't want to go mainstream. I want to do something that is different, has its own say it's unique, it's had its own niche. I want to pursue that, so I wanted to pursue a different path. But unfortunately, because of personal reasons, I was unable to go abroad. And in Pakistan, psychology is sort of limited to just like the clinical fields, like clinical counseling, psychotherapy, that sort of thing. So at that point, that's not what I wanted to pursue. And during then, I also wanted, while I was pursuing my degree, I wanted to find some means to sort of make my own money, sort of become financially independent. And at that point, I didn't have any specific trajectory in mind. I just wanted to do something that I was good at, something I liked doing, and saw that it would make a lucrative path for me. So these, I think, are three things that I kept in mind because it was very important for me to do something that I was passionate about doing. Because if I'm not passionate about doing it, I don't think I would want to or have my heart set on doing that at all. So that's when I discovered that I really like writing and I thought I was a very good writer. So I thought maybe working as a freelance journalist for a media company, that's something that I could do. And that's where I started. I started working as a freelance writer for a local publication called Feed, and I worked there until that company, being a startup that was going through hard times, it shut down. And I think a few months later, I discovered The Tempest when my mom shared an article on her social media, and I saw that there were applications open for fellowship programs. And I thought, why not? I mean, what's the worst that could happen? That I get rejected? No worries. Let me just give it a shot. And when I applied, I went through the interview process. So I applied as a community fellow because I thought that that would be something new, something different for me. It's going to be a learning curve. And I went for it, to be honest. I wasn't thinking too much on it. I just saw it, it appealed to me, I applied for it. And yeah, I got into the fellowship. I had a 3-month fellowship with the Tempest, after which I decided to stay on the company because I love the values it represented and its mission to represent all the marginalized communities that exist in the world. And I stayed on as a community editor. and that position allowed me to not just write my own articles, not just expand my career as a journalist, but later on I realized that, you know what, psychology actually helped me in realizing, what the general public wants, what my audience wants, what are topics that they would like, what are things that they would want to know more about. That's something I used in my writing, and that is something I realized that I could use in marketing. So that was when I discovered that, okay, marketing is an area that, I could work in. So then I started working on marketing for the Tempest and sales and bringing partnerships and just communicating with people and bringing them on board, closing deals, the whole thing. So honestly, it was kind of like learning on the job for me, and learning on the job helped me discover all these new things about myself. And that was when I became brand development strategist, and I realized that, what, I have a good, not only do I have a thing for writing, but marketing is something that I could, not only was it a new field for me, but it was something that I realized, hey, you know what, I like this and I'm strangely good at it. So I went for it.
I love the whole mantra of kind of just not overthinking when you apply to things and kind of approaching it with that, what's the worst that could happen? I get rejected, no worries, I'll move on. Like I love that so much, and I think as women we all kind of need that reminder sometimes. Wouldn't you think? Wouldn't you say?
For sure. Oh, for sure. Because I feel like we're so, because I feel like a lot of us are told continuously, like we're told to limit ourselves, we're told to stay in our limits, and that there are things that we can't do more than things that we can do. And okay, so I don't know if this is like really professional for me to say, but you know that meme on Twitter that can, like, just F around and find out?
Yes,
That's
yes.
actually really, really good advice, because if you don't F around, you're not going to find out a lot of things. Sometimes you just need to take that leap of faith and just go for it. If you think you can do it, if you think you have half the capabilities that are required for that particular career that you want to go for, I'd say go for it. At least, give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen, right?
That's really excellent advice. You hear that, you guys? F around and find out. Um, I mean, I know dwelling on kind of like regrets or what you would have done differently is never the way to go. But can I just ask you if you could kind of go back in time, do one thing differently, or kind of tell your younger self a few things? What would that look like?
So if I were to tell my younger self something, and something that I've learned now, is not to just let imposter syndrome and not let yourself be held back by what you think you can't do, or whether you're good enough for it or you're smart enough. I think what I would tell myself is that nobody else in the world can define who you are. I think that's the core reasoning I would give myself. Like, don't let yourself be defined by what people say you are or you're not. Like, if somebody says that, oh, you can't, even if it's not something so outright as, oh, you're not smart enough for this, or you're not pretty enough for this, or you're not good enough for this, even if it's something that's super passive, like, you know, are you sure? I don't think so. Or, my advice would be this, even though you want to do something else. I think in the end, you know what's best for yourself. So just go with your gut feeling. If you feel like you can do something, give it a shot. And this is something, and with this is something I even told Janine when she was working with me, is that don't be afraid to try. Like, even if you feel, if even if you're afraid that's not going to work out, or even if you think, oh, I'm not going to get this job, or I'm not going to get, succeed as whatever you want to work as, give it a shot. Give it a shot. Like, what's the worst that can happen? It's not going to work out. If it's not going to work out, you can find something else. There's always something else. There's always another door that you can open, but you won't really know unless you try. And even if you do try and it doesn't work out, at least you won't have any regrets that, you didn't give it a shot.
That's an excellent mindset to have, but I always wonder because I'm kind of like a serial perfectionist, so I just will not try things out of fear of failure. Is that
Mhm.
mindset something you had to like train yourself to have, or is it kind of just an innate thing for you?
Yes, that was something I had to train myself to do because I was an insane perfectionist myself. And I was the kind of person that if something was not 100 out of 100, I would hate it and I would hate myself. I was like, okay, I am a failure at this. I should just cease to exist. La la la, that whole thing. And with time, I realized, hey, it's not that serious. It's not that deep. So there's, and yeah, it just, I think when you go through those failures, when you go make those mistakes and you go through those hard bumps in life, they teach you a lot more as than you think you do. So that is something that you should look at failure in that sense. Like even if it doesn't work out, it's another lesson learned, but
Mhm.
don't just let it weigh you down. Like, okay, that happened, that was a speed breaker, made me bump, but we move on, we will.
Yeah, life goes on always. I'm really curious to hear about how you kind of, because you started as a community fellow, you were sat in my seat, and then you worked your way up all the way to brand development. So tell us about that whole process of like working your way up the food chain. What do you think made you stand out of the dozens of community fellows at the Tempest and helped you evolve in that kind of a way?
So what comes to mind is actually my first interview with the head of the community department. So I remember when I was asked, like, why why do you think you're capable for this role, like, and have you done anything that you know has contributed to a society's community or your local community or something of that sort. So I didn't overthink it, and I wasn't really thinking about how I could make this sound like I'm so professional and I have tons of experience on this. I just relayed examples that as simple as they were. Like, for example, I would just narrate an example that I did something in a school society, or but what I highlighted were what I thought I was capable of doing and how what I thought I would be capable of doing. So I think one thing that I personally am like and I personally stressed upon was that I'm open to learn. That if I don't know something, so I'll say that, I don't have experience in a certain area or a certain field, but I'm open to learn and I'm willing to learn, and I know that I can make great contributions as I go along. And as I said that, you know learning on the job is also a thing. So you as you move on through your career and you make mistakes, you ask questions, you learn, and then you use that knowledge to improve yourself. So I think that is the biggest way I progressed through my career, is that I just learned on the go. Like, because being a community fellow, I had no experience working in community or community development or audience engagement or even lead generation and recruitment. That is something I learned as I progressed through. And another important thing is, never be afraid to ask stupid questions. Even if you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to seem like the dumbest person in the world if I ask this question, don't. Trust me. Like, if you don't ask those stupid questions, you're not going to know. And it's better to ask stupid questions than to pretend you know and then mess things up exponentially. So never be afraid to ask questions, and never be afraid to not know something. So, like, I think when Janine remembers this, like, this is something I stressed to the entire department while I worked at the Tempest. So it's like, if you feel like you don't know something, ask me. I will answer it for you. I'll be open to helping you out wherever you need. But don't pretend to know something and then, you know, mess it up. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. That's what I would say. And that is something I did. I asked stupid questions, even though I would have that nagging feeling that, oh my God, am I stupid? Am I like? what are they going to think of me? And that is something that I had the privilege of having great mentors myself. They were open to helping me out wherever I needed it. And that is something I took along with me. And when I started working in the marketing aspect and becoming brand development strategist, that again, and I had no experience with sales and marketing prior to this. I felt like, okay, so I knew I did have my psychology background, and I sort of used that to determine what a particular brand needs, if there's something that they would like to one up their competition, or if they even just going on instinct and determining if we have something that they can use and that nobody else has. So just trusting yourself, trusting your instincts, doing your research, connecting the dots along the way. In every aspect, connect the dots as much as you can. That's immensely helpful. And I think that is something that has helped me just take my career to the next level continuously.
That's amazing. And I mean, I know for me personally, it was really beneficial to have a mentor, to have a leader there who made it incredibly clear that there's no such thing as a dumb question and that all questions are welcome, because creating that environment just helps everybody. But something I'd really like to know more about is, so Alexandria Labs does amazing work where they
Mhm.
connect authors with their audiences via Web3. And I want to know, what's your favorite book, or a book that you feel has helped you grow as a person or just impacted your life?
Hmm.
Putting you on the
That's
spot here. I know. I apologize.
yeah, yeah. You did put me on the spot because I feel like I have a lot of books that I can pick and choose from. But I I feel like what I'm gonna say is gonna be, I don't know if it's gonna be a very cliched response, but it's honest. So I'd say I would say Paulo Coelho's Manual of the Warrior of Light, because I feel like I read that book at a time when I was so confused about myself, about okay, it's getting a little existential here, but it's like, do I have a purpose? Is there a meaning to, my life? Because there has been a time in my life where I felt like, I felt like I was just lost and confused. Like, why am I here? What am I here for? I have been through this phase like for a very long time. So I feel like that the advice in that book, I feel like is something that I myself particularly needed to hear at that point. And it was really eye opening, and it sort of helped me realize, that there is so much more to what we see out there in the world and what we're told is factual in the world. So that is something that encouraged me to, open my mind and broaden my horizons into, learning more, taking in everything that I learn, that I'm exposed to or I'm taught, and then just using that to create my own knowledge base and choosing those things that I feel like are personally beneficial to me instead of what everybody else considers right. So I think, yeah, I would recommend that book. So,
Oh, I think that's a really important message, especially in the age of social media, where I always think like I hear advice or I see people recommending certain things, and then I have to think, okay, does this work for me? Is this true to who I am? So I think that's really, really important. Would you mind telling us more about, because I'm clueless about Web3. So would you mind telling us more about how Web3 kind of impacts authors and writers in that kind of a space?
so here's the thing again. I had no prior knowledge about Web3 myself. So this was another new career path for me, and that was something that I was excited about as well, because I thought that this is such an up and coming field, tech field, and I thought that, working here is going to teach me a lot of new things, different things, even if whether I'm going to apply this knowledge in the future or not. That at least, I know something about it, because I'm personally someone who just loves to learn about everything, whether I'm going to use this or not in the future. I so in that sense, I feel like Web3 is a very, very interesting and it's a very unique niche. I never thought I would look at it this way because I before that I had only I apologize if there's background noise behind me, by the way, but because initially I thought Web3 is taking away from artists and writers, and is probably causing like a lot of environmental damage. Those are stuff that's stuff that I previously heard about Web3, and I was not very open to it. And because I feel like it's Pakistani nature to be slightly suspicious of everything, because we don't really take things like at face value. We're not very open to things that we don't know completely about. So I think that it's a relatively new avenue, and I think that has a lot of potential for expansion once you realize how to work things out there. But I'll be honest, like feel like I'm still learning, and I don't have sufficient knowledge to tell you about how it can be utilized. But I personally feel like it's an interesting new avenue, and it once you sort of hone it and accept it, I think it's going to be a really nice platform for authors to sort of retain royalties and not have to go through unnecessary pay cuts, and they can get their fair share of revenue while their audience gets the book itself as a unique digital item. So it's, for example, if say there's one original version of Harry Potter and the rest of the printed versions are copies, right? So in Web3, every version of Harry Potter that you purchase has its own unique digital digital footprint. So what you're claiming is a very unique copy. So so everybody. So if Janine has a copy of Harry Potter on Web3, I have a copy of Harry Potter on Web3. Its digital footprint makes it more unique. It's not a photocopy. It's not a pirated version. It's a unique item. It's a digital collectible that you can sell on. You can make a profit off of it. The authors, so not to support J.K. Rowling, but the author themselves, they can get their due without having to experience unnecessary pay cuts. So I think that is something that's very interesting and very cool to find out.
No, that is really, really cool. I mean, just listing, if I were to list all of the different things that you've done, your work in academia, your work in community development and brand management, I'd run out of breath right here and now. But I wanted to ask, what are you most proud of throughout your career, throughout your academic career? What is one thing that you're like, this is my creme de la creme?
Okay, so one very important lesson is to once you figure out that you want to do something, and I mean like it doesn't have to be specific. It can be as general as saying, what, I want to be a tech superstar, or I want to be an artist, or I want to pursue my master's degree. Is to stand your ground. If you truly want to do it, you know that this is something that you want to do. And again, even no matter whether you fail at it or you succeed, stand your ground. Don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions, and stand your ground. Don't let anybody tell you that what if they think that it's not a lucrative path, or it's not a good path, or it's not a path that's gonna make you a famous superstar or anything. If you want to do it, stand your ground. Be determined. That is something that I learned, because getting my master's degree was a personal struggle as well. Because there were a lot of people who were like, what do you need a master's for? You can get married and whatever. And I was like, nope. And I got my master's degree in a totally unrelated field from psychology, but I was just determined to get a master's degree. So that's like a good example of if you want to do it, do it. And if you don't succeed at it, don't hold any regrets. Like, you tried, you gave it your best, and that should be enough. And there's always another path that you can discover. There's always another door you can open. So go out there with a brave heart.
No, I love that. And your master's, correct me if I'm wrong, philosophy and international relations, yes? Is what you did your.
Yeah. It's just international relations, but yeah, it's a master in philosophy. It's an MPhil
Oh,
degree in.
gotcha, gotcha.
So
No,
I
but
went from applied psychology to international relations simply because I wanted a master's degree.
no, but I reckon there's a lot of link there. I feel like maybe like that's how psychology plays out on a bigger scale. I'm sure though
It
there are so
does.
many transferable skills you get from that.
Yeah, it does. It does in a way. I won't lie, but I but again, like I mentioned, that if it was something that I wasn't completely passionate about, I wouldn't have pursued it. So I it's not that I hated international relations, or I was just really just doing this out of a desperation for a master's degree. If I wasn't into international relations, I would never have pursued that degree. So I thought, it's an interesting degree. And besides, like, even on your resume, the more diverse your resume and your CV is, the more recruiters appreciate that. They like diversity on a resume. So I thought that it would be a nice little additive. And even if I work in a department, in an international relations related department, like say defense or foreign relations or something, or in like global economy or something like that, it would be something useful for me to have. So it won't be completely useless. It'll just expand my career path in a sense. So whatever you learn, it just expands the many paths that you can take in life.
Very, very true. What was throughout this whole course of effing around and finding out, what was the one skill that you were like, this is so hard for me to build on? It was just really tricky to sort
Hmm.
of implement into the way that you work and the way that you are. What's that one skill for you?
A skill that was difficult for me to implement.
Yeah.
Hmm. What skill would be difficult? I feel like tech related knowledge, I suppose. I mean, because I, by nature, I'm a more creative person. And tech is something that is like, I don't like things that I feel are, dry and boring and technical. So, no offense to any tech majors out there. If you love it, that's great. But I personally, I feel like, especially when I was working in Alexandria, or when I had to work on a little bit of wanting to get a little bit of like coding and SEO, I felt like, oh my God. But so it was something I needed to do, especially for writing, and especially in my editing and my journalism career. But I was like, oh man, I can't do this. I just want to write and just have it published. I don't want to deal with search engine optimization and tags and keywords and all of this. But sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, especially if you love what you're doing.
No, I feel that. I hate technology related things. Even just starting Zoom calls, I'm like, ooh, what do I click again? Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
another thing that I like I was initially hesitant about was like Zoom or phone conversations, especially in partnerships, because I would be very, very nervous when talking. When I made my first brand call for partnerships, I was so nervous, and I wanted my mentor to be on that call with me. I was like, I cannot do this. I don't know what to do. But I was so glad that I did that call on my own, because that gave me the confidence. You know what? I was like, that didn't go so bad. I can do this. This is fun. And later on, I just made all the sales and partnership calls on my own. And if I hadn't taken that risk and that leap and just had my mentor with me on my first call, I don't think I would have had the confidence to do it.
yeah, nothing's ever as scary as we make it out to be in our heads. Do you reckon?
Mm.
Mm.
Yes, and that's something I'm still learning to this day, because even to this day, uh, the unknown does scare me a little bit. But at times, I know that I have to take that leap. Otherwise, maybe it could give me something so super useful to learn about, right?
Mm.
So you have, again, cliche piece of advice, but you have to step out of your comfort zone a bit, because that's how you're going to learn and grow.
Oh, absolutely. Just kind of dive straight into the deep end and see what happens. By the way, Arsh, can I ask, F around and find out, can I use that as like the LinkedIn heading for the promotion of this like talk? I really think that's a great LinkedIn tagline.
Feel free to do it, please.
No,
It's
it's
going to be the
great.
most interesting talk, and I wonder people are going to say like, huh.
No, it's great advice though. You're right. It works. I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna turn to the crowd. And guys, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type into the chat. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask that first question.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, like, with your like with working in the media, is there like ways that you subconsciously try to get messages through to people, and like, did your experience with psychology help that?
I think psychology did help that, because psychology too, as well as my own personal experience, because if for when I became a mentor, I sort of honed in on my feelings and when I was learning from my mentors, and sort of using that, maybe they're as nervous as I was, or maybe they're as curious, but they're, a little apprehensive about asking that stupid question as maybe I was at one point. So I use my personal experience that, maybe they feel this way as well. And sometimes language is also very important, like when they message you or their tone of voice, that's a very, very good indicator of what they could be feeling. Like you could tell whether they're nervous, whether they're excited, whether they're not having a good mental health day per se. So I think that those are things that help me out when reaching out to people.
Any other questions? Any follow-ups? Okay.
No questions.
Fair
Not
enough.
even stupid ones.
Oh my god. No, you know what? I've always kind of the working in
Apple
the
juice. Apple juice.
Apple juice.
Yeah. Somebody asked me apple juice or orange juice. That's apple juice.
I didn't see the chat. I thought you were just that was just like a proclamation of your love for apple juice. I was like, yeah, fair enough. Yes, correct answer. Yeah, Heidi clearly agrees with you. But no, I was just gonna say like the Tempest was my first proper like introduction to the world of work. I'm trying to think of a less cliche way of saying it, but yeah, it was great to have a mentor who was open to stupid questions, who was really empathetic and tried to, like you said, try to draw from their own experiences to kind of gauge how others were feeling. What do you think is like the importance of that just general empathy in your line of work?
I think empathy is one of the most important things that you can have as a mentor or as a general human being, really, because human connection in every aspect of your life, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, whether you're networking for opportunities, I feel like the depth of the connection that you have with other people is very, very important. Like, so in the networking aspect, if you, because so usually when we're networking in, say, something as technical and professional as partnerships, right? We're usually taught to, like have a bit of like some small talk. They get to find out about their interests. They find some common ground, because that adds the personal touch that you need in an otherwise very cold and very bland relationship. So even in the most professional of relationships, you need to have personal connection. So having empathy, even if you're not even if you're not empathetic by nature, I feel like the good place to start would be, if I were in their shoes or if I were this person, like, what would I feel? What would I be thinking at this moment? Like, I give Janine's example as a mentee. Like, I remember, Janine, you were 16 when you were with the Tempest, right?
14.
Yeah, she was 14, and I think she was the most enthusiastic, the most excited like fellow I had ever had the pleasure of working with, and she was just brimming with ideas, and I was just like, oh my god, I wish I was like this at 14. I wasn't even like this when I was 18 or like 19. I was like, oh my god, she this. And and then, so when Janine had a question, or I sort of had an idea that she's being hesitant about something, or she's unsure about how to um, go about a certain process. I just think, like, what, if I were in her shoes and I was a mentee and I was unsure, I would want my mentor to be encouraging and make me feel like this is a safe space where I can speak my mind freely. And I want my mentees to feel like their opinions and their ideas matter too. It's not just high end executives ideas, because who knows, maybe your intern could have the best idea that could completely transform a company, right? And that is how I would want to feel. So that is something I used as a mentor and as a department head to everybody who was working with me, that your ideas and your opinions matter too. So I think that human connection is very, very important.
No, definitely. And it makes for superb leadership, as you just mentioned. But sorry, we had a question from Heidi. Did you have any
Oh,
specific
yeah.
role models or events that inspired your career?
Specific role models. I think, okay, so if I were to go back, okay, who just popped into my head? It's very random, but my biology teacher in O levels, because so she was one of the first people who was, she actually studied and she lived in the US before coming to Pakistan and teaching biology, right? And I remember that I was what? I was, I think, 14, 15 at that point. And I remember that not only she would teach us about what, the syllabus or the course required us to learn, but she also taught us a lot of extra things that I don't think any other Pakistani biology teacher would have ever taught us. Like, she, when talking about reproduction in plants and animals, she, as a side knowledge, she taught us about the concept of what to do when you're harassed or assaulted, and the concept of consent, and then teaching us about the how virginity is a social construct. Like, nobody in Pakistan would ever think about teaching us this, aside from the typical biology courses that are required. And she was also the first person that who sort of taught us the importance of loving and respecting yourself as a person. And I remember at one point I was very sad because a family member was very, very cruel to me about my physical appearance. And I she made the class environment in such a way that I felt like it was a safe space for me to speak to her. So when she wasn't teaching us anything, I went up to her and I talked to her about it. And she gave me advice about that what they're saying does not matter. What matters is what you think of yourself, and you need to have confidence in yourself, and you need to respect yourself, because nobody else is going to respect you, whether they do or do not. But ultimately, you have to respect yourself, even if nobody else in the world does. And then she would give me song recommendations, like with inspiring lyrics to listen to. And I remember that thinking that was the first time that I thought, okay, this person is inspiring. She is someone I needed at that moment. And I think, like, I don't know where I would be without the knowledge that she gave me at that time and at that like, moment. And then she even taught me about like different, say, like, cures for reproductive infections. That, because in Pakistan, talking about sexual reproduction is still taboo, and it's shameful topic. You don't talk about this in public. Yeah, it's still in this day and age. And this was like in 2011, 2010, 2011, when the world wasn't very open to talking about these topics. So I think that was for the first instance I remember of having a valuable mentor, inspirational figure in your life.
Wow, she sounds like an incredible teacher. That is really, really cool. Guys, any last questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. No? All right. In that case, Arsh, I'd just like to thank you for joining us today and for being here and for giving us your time and giving us such great advice. I know we're all going to continue effing around and finding out, and we're going to progress in that way. Any last words?
I mean, okay, so for me, last word would just be to never. Okay, so this is something that my mentor at the Tempest taught me, is that whatever you set out to do. Okay, so I know I told you guys to not be afraid to try, to hold your ground, to ask stupid questions, F around, find out. But also, last parting advice would be to do everything in your life with the confidence of a straight white man.
Amen.
Because straight white men may not even have a quarter of the talent that you have, but they think they own the world. They think they rule this shit. I don't know if I can say this here, but yeah, they
No,
think they
go
can rule
ahead.
everything. Yeah, they think they own the world. They think they can rule everything, and they just apply to jobs even if they have like 2 out of 10 skills, and they get it. Confidence of a straight white man.
So true. Oh my God. Yeah, that was, yeah. I mean, look at the last few presidents the US has had. I don't think any of them have met the qualifications of the role completely, but
Yeah,
that's
if you ever feel bad about yourself, look how badly government officials and political people who are in charge of ruling your entire country, look how bad they're messing up. I think in comparison, you guys are doing great, no matter what you're doing.
thank you for that, Arsh. That is very, very accurate for sure. But thank you so much for being here. I know we all learned a
Thank you
lot.
for
I know
having me.
I wrote down a bunch of like key points about effing around, finding out,
Excellent.
standing your ground.
I gave great advice, didn't I?
I think you really do, and it's all. I don't think you give the kind of advice that you don't realize how valuable it is until you really throw yourself in the deep end, and you're like, okay, that's what she meant. This is what she's talking about. So I think we all took something from this talk. So thank you so much for this, Arsh.
Thank you for having me, guys. Take care and just whatever you do, have a great life.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you so much, Arsh. I'll catch up with you later.
All right, perfect.
Bye bye.
All right, everyone, take care. Bye. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.